Konnichiwa or hello. So today I'm going to be talking about anime and manga. First, I'll talk about what the definition of anime is, depending on either Japanese culture or any culture outside of Japan. Then I will be going into the different genres there are of anime and manga. Next, I will talk about the cultural impact of anime and manga. And finally, I will show you how um, you can experience a sort of limited form of Japanese culture through anime and manga. So the definition of anime in Japan includes both Japanese and Western animated films or cartoons. So this could refer to like Mulan or like anime from Japan, such as Naruto. It's not as limited as the Western sort of definition of what anime is. In the rest of the world, or anywhere outside of Japan, anime usually refers to cartoons that are strictly from Japan and nowhere else. This definition is a little bit more limited than how the Japanese view anime. The cultural impact of anime and manga can really be seen through the manga sales of the manga One Piece by Eiichiro Oda. Currently, his manga has sold about 500 million copies all around the world. So the impact of his manga is not just seen in Japan, but also outside of Japan. Another way anime and manga has impacted the West is through cosplay. Began in Japan, but has gradually transitioned over to the West, and is where people decide to dress up as their favorite anime characters and attend Comic-Con or an anime-thon or anything to do with anime, and sort of emulate their behavior and pay ode to like their favorite character. So anime and manga can be split into two distinct categories. They An anime or manga can either be considered a shonen or a shoujo. Shonen, as you can see on the left side of the screen, tends to cater towards more boys, especially when the categories first came into popularity. Although, however, now shonen anime is primarily liked, especially in the West, pretty equally between boys and girls. Shoujo, on the other hand, tends to cater towards girls and deal with a lot more sort of romancy type plot lines. It tends to have a lot of pretty boys, deals with high school romance, and stuff like that. Anime and manga actually, between themselves, have pretty distinct differences. Manga is the drawn version of anime. It looks more like comic books than it does anime. Anime usually comes after the manga, like after manga has garnered success in Japan. It'll be made into an anime and then distributed out to the West. Now we're going to look at how in anime a lot of Japanese culture is reflected. Um, we'll look at this by comparing the anime Inuyasha and comparing representations of Japanese culture in the anime to actual cultural things that exist in Japan. The first example of Japanese culture I found in the anime was actually the main character Kagome, so the girl in the right part of the screen. She In this like photo, she's actually wearing a high school girl's uniform, which is actually a pretty common form of clothing worn by high school girls in Japan. A lot of public schools have uniforms, although a lot of private schools do allow students to wear their own clothes nowadays. The second reflection of Japanese culture I found in Inuyasha was actually in the architecture of the buildings that are drawn within the anime. I've provided two examples from the anime and then also two examples from buildings in Japan that have this similar architecture. The roof of the building is where you can see the most similarity, and this is actually Kagome's house, like um, and she lives at a shrine, so this makes sense because a lot of architecture and culture came over from China in the early days of Japan, and Japan sort of emulated a lot of Chinese culture and brought it into their own. So that's why um, a lot of the Japanese characters are the same as Chinese characters because a lot of Japanese culture was actually based on Chinese culture. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope you learned at least one thing about anime from this presentation. So again, I went over what the definition of what anime is in Japan versus the West. I talked about the cultural impacts of anime and manga in the West, and I also talked about different cultural elements that we can see in anime that stem from Japan. Again, thank you for watching. じゃあね